Can they just do that?
So, in the last conversation I had with Jim Clifford, he didn't make me aware of that because you recall the commissioners had a vote that they would reduce the impact fee to the townhouse fee as long as all the homes were 2,000
or less,
under.
yeah.
So that's going to impact that and the draft PIA that we have currently underway, but he is not held to any size limitation with the exception of lot coverage.
With the exception of what?
Lot coverage.
Okay. All right, well, so that's all I've got. Like, it sounds like he has a builder and things are slowly moving forward, but he's trying to figure some things out, and, you know, I'm kind of anxious to get that started, but, so, that's all I got. Thought you guys would be curious.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Everybody had a chance to read the minutes from the October 11th meeting,
The grueling October 11th meeting.
ruling October 11th meeting. I think every word was written in these
I
minutes.
make a motion, we approve the minutes of the October 11th Planning Commission meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Amanda abstains because she's not here. She wasn't here. Thank you. Moving on to new business, we'll go right down in order. We'll do 5.1 recommendation on variance 002-23 for 17100 Hoskinson Road for an addition that encroaches on the BRL.
Mr. Smith, you want to come on up and lead your case?
If you would please just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Edwin Smith. I live at 17100 Hoskinson Road in Poolesville. Everybody in town just knows me as Rusty. This is the plot. And we had another survey done by the new surveyor in Potomac Valley. And he overlaid the information that my architect had given me. We were consulting Ken Allen, but that's a long hand. The way we're trying to do this is to create a sunroom in this area that comes right off the living room. It gives us room for a bathroom right here. Now, Bodmer runs here, Hoskinson runs here. The front corner of the house is 44 feet from the street. And so we're looking for a variance of around 10 to 11 feet. I've walked the neighborhood and talked to other neighbors who've had similar things done. I'm at a disadvantage because my house is set so far back. It was built before they completed the block. When they built the houses down this way and down this way, they gave the corner lots larger lots because people wanted them. But when they got to our lot, they were encroaching by 3 feet on this side and 3 feet on this side from the last two houses they built. So I'm kind of catty-cornered in the back with a real tiny backyard. So the only place I have to go is either right out the front, which blocks the front door, or right off this corner. And what it does is it puts this much of the addition over the line. The rest of it's all within the standard boundary. So it's only an exception for that many square feet, which is, on my calculation, less than 125 square feet. A 300 square foot addition. I've got the variance sign posted out. I've got neighbors on all four corners, plus their neighbors that have already said they don't have a problem with it. So unless the town has a problem with it, or the county, I'm hoping for the best. I'm a longtime Poolesville resident. We've been in this house for a long time, and before that, we were in townhouses on Hughes Road. And I grew up down on Hughes Road.
So, I didn't get a chance to go out and look at your property, but I know where it is. And I'm just going to state a couple things and ask a couple questions just for clarity. Typically, these setbacks are set so that they maintain consistency down the roadway, right? So if you're looking down the roadway, you see the front of everybody's house lines up straight, and it keeps a nice, clean look. The corner lots, so therefore, we wouldn't grant many exceptions where somebody would want to move closer to the road. It interrupts that. In my opinion, these corner lots don't have the same disruptive appeal if they encroach on these boundaries. Furthermore, he's got nowhere else to go. And I'll ask the question to Wade and to you, are other people in the neighborhood doing similar additions?
Down the street, some have done similar additions on the corner of White Road and Hoskinson. They did an addition there that was much larger than this, and he's exactly the 10 foot within the boundary line like this.
Mm-hmm.
There are other places up and around the corner where they've added a garage, they've done things that are close to the similar guidelines that I'm doing. Plus, if you've been to my place or been by it, I have a row of oak trees here and a row of trees that were planted when we bought the house, all along this bank, and you can't even see the corner of the house in there. It's all hidden by green space.
And Wade, we talked about this before the meeting. This is something you recommend that we approve?
Certainly, when you take a look at lot configuration and the ability for homeowners with similar lots and homes within the Westerly subdivision have the ability to enjoy their property and build exactly the same type of addition without encroaching into the thing, just his lot configuration and house placement sets him apart from that, and that's the perfect thing for a hardship as according to the code. So,
Okay.
yes, we recommend it.
Should I make a motion? Does anybody have any more questions? Okay, I make a motion that we, are we approving the variance, or are we recommending?
Recommending approval to the BZA.
I make a motion, we recommend the approval of variance 002-23 to the BZA for 17100 Hodgkinson Road.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Now, before we hire a contractor or pull permits, I still have to wait for the December
Easy.
5th hearing.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure nobody else has a problem.
Exactly correct.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wouldn't.
Unless you have insomnia or something.
That's fine.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
All right, moving on to site plan review and recommendation on variance 003-23, parking and special exception 002-23, use of outdoor theater for 17605 West Willard Road. I believe that would be you guys. And again, just for the record, if you would name and address into the microphone.
David Terrio, 19215 Bellsville Road, and
Sandy Wright. I live with him.
you have to say,
19215 Bellsville Road.
Thank you very much.
Is that one?
You want to walk us through what you want to do?
We were hoping John would do that.
John, you want to walk us through what they want to do?
So, you should have a packet from Niles regarding what was submitted and items that were also gathered. So, they're proposing an addition of to the existing Old Methodist Church. The total square footage then would be 4,893 square feet. We note that the site work, that also covers Rose site work. The square footage of the buildings is 2,484 square feet. That is 9.2% of the property. They're allowed up to 35%. The site plan shows the proposed building footprint, walkways, parking area, and a trash disposal area. The classification on the plan is for a theater, outdoors type, as that we've discussed before. They're not fully defined within the code. Based upon that, the proposed operation, this would classify as a legitimate theater. That's the best I could come up with. That's number 124. If outdoor productions are to take place and would require a special exception, see the use chart, and that's found in the use chart. The outdoor theaters require a special exception. The plan also said a cultural institution. We do not have a definition for a cultural institution in our code. That's where we're at with that. The site plan also should be considered for certain things, such as lighting, streetscape, landscaping, architectural features. These are items that I had did not have that information. All I had was the site plan. Proposed parking for that area, if it's considered to be a theater, is they would need, they call for 129 seats. They require for every 4 seats, a parking space. That equals out to be 32.25. The plan shown proposes 5 standard parking spaces and 1 additional ADA parking space. If a variance is to be considered regarding the parking, then you would, and if they're going to use other people's parking area, we'd need some type of an agreement to go along with the plan to say that, this is all okay. So, let's see, currently the property has a prescriptive right-of-way on it. We'd recommend discussions with the property owner to incorporate a contiguous right-of-way, although it can only be limited because of the building that's in place. Right now, a prescriptive right-of-way is 5 feet wide, which makes improvements to the property frontage, if the town decided to do something, not practical for a 5-foot prescriptive right-of-way. The responsibility for permits, they would need to get Montgomery County permits for whatever additions, and also being that their stormwater or their area of disturbance is 4,893, that's really close to 5,000 feet. And they should be aware that, if Montgomery County comes in and says you've gone over, they may have to supply a stormwater management plan to Montgomery County. If approved, they will still need to get their Montgomery County building permits. The responsibility of the commission in this regard is twofold. One is to make a recommendation for two different things. One would be the parking, the other would be the outdoor use of a theater. And then that would go before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then also the configuration of the site plan.
So just to jump in there real quick, the site plan, being a commercial site plan in a commercial zone, will require a public hearing set by this body.
I could say, you called it 4,800, but for reasons of disturbance, it does not include the existing structure or the pavement that is there now. We would subtract that. So it really makes the build much less. It's, I think it's closer to 18.
Yeah, I can only go what was on the plans.
Right. But they don't count the building as it is right now. I think, and that goes to the fact that it wasn't so much the square footage that we were concerned with the parking. It was the use of the land is going to be as a park. So if we take up all that land with 30 parking places, we lose the ability to even have a theater or to have an area where people can sit and relax. And,
So what do you want to do about the parking?
I want to put 6 spots in.
And how are you going to handle the rest of the crowd? Because there's
Well,
300 people there, right?
So far,
The- No, it's, okay, it's a theater at times. Other times, it's just a cultural center, right, with a gallery inside, and, you might have rehearsals going on in there, other things. So it's, most of the time, you don't need 30 parking spots. And we figured with the events will be at times when other lots in the area may not be.
will be freed up.
used.
So far, the use of the property has coincided with when K2 is closed, and I've talked to them, and they're okay. They don't, they rent, so they don't really have the say how their parking is used, but they had no problem up to this point.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm the owner of that property, and I
Oh, hi.
have not approved any parking of theirs.
No,
on
I
my
didn't
property.
say you did. I did not say you did. I said, I asked K2, and they said they're not the owner of the property and that you would have.
Absolutely not. And they're one tenant of many in the Poolesville Professional Center. And I'm the owner.
True, that's true. That's
So
true.
we could suggest people, we could stop people from parking in your lot. There's the Methodist Church up the road, there's the high school, there's the Bassett.
Okay, but there's going to be 140 people attending a theater at certain times with 5 spaces and no ADA. And you're only covering 9% of your property, which means you have 91% of your property left to put a parking lot. And instead, you're planning to use K2 in my parking lot. And that's a non-starter, I'm sorry.
For him, we understand. I'm gonna, could you also, what's his last name? I can't read it.
Lupus.
Mr. Lupus, thank you
Yes.
very much for being here and for,
I'm Associates Inc., we're the owners of the Poolesville Professional Center, 20010 Fisher Avenue, and also 17610 West Willard, immediately across the street from this applicant.
okay, to avoid any, back and forth, I'll just let you speak on any other issues you might have, anything else you wanted to discuss, and I will come back to you again a little bit later.
Only that, 140-seat theater with 5 parking spaces and no ADA, and no parking plan during those hours that they plan to. I mean, if it's street parking, it would go from Fisher Avenue all the way to the school to put 28 more cars that are required. The 32.25 parking spaces required plus 1 ADA, and they plan to provide only 5 with no ADA. So there's, by code, another 28 cars that need to park somewhere. And when I hear K2, that's appalling. Nobody's ever spoken to me, and regardless, the answer is no.
Understood?
Wade, how is this, what's the situation with street parking on Wooten over there? And just that area in general?
There are places that they can park, but, as part of the variance, I mean, I guess you could say the off-site parking, but the code does require specific parking allocations, and we have given variances in the past. Dollar General was a prime example. Our parking requirements are pretty stringent, but, yeah, if you
And
use
the difference is 26 is the delta between code requirements and what the applicant is offering.
Understood. We have the numbers in front of us. We appreciate it. Well, we'll ask you again when we're ready to hear from you, okay? Thank you.
Right, so looking at the code, I mean, there's requirements for on-site parking, and if off-site parking is requested or required, then typically you would have a agreement with another property owner with the lot, which becomes part of the special exception or variance process.
We did something similar for the restaurant with Jameson and their parking.
We've never seen the agreement there. I believe there is an agreement, but we were not privy to it. I wasn't here at that point
We
in
never
time.
saw the agreement, but they
But
said,
there is one, the barber shop is another one. They have an agreement with Mr. Jameson
Yeah.
for that property there. So it is done.
And I guess in theory, people could park at your restaurant parking for these
Absolutely.
events?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or, I mean,
There are other
the
neighbors
agreement
also.
to park, I mean, can it be per event, or do we need to have we will always use, for example, have an agreement with the church to use their parking?
For a certain
Is that
event
what
or-
would be required? I guess that's my question.
So then pedestrians will be cutting across my property from,
sir, thank you.
Hey, Niles, can we mute that one?
I will come back to you and ask you again for any final comments.
Not the other church, the Baptist church.
In any event, any church, they need to have an agreement for 32.5 or whatever the number is that John
You
has.
have to come up with a number somehow.
But per
Okay,
per
or we could
event-
use the locals one
Right,
for 30 spots.
right. You can put
And
James-
locals
Or,
would
okay,
not
can
be able to
we
be
park on
open.
our
Right,
grass?
but not,
Locals would not be able to be open and doing business while an event was going on,
Right.
otherwise, if you were to do that.
yeah.
And that would have to be in writing.
Can we use our grass?
What grass?
Well, we have, apparently 90% of our property is grass.
No, the code actually specifies exactly what a parking spot has to be. Unfortunately, no.
Okay, so do you want to, so also in keeping with the master plan and the things that people want for Poolesville to be a pedestrian town, et cetera, I submit that putting another parking lot is not in keeping with the visions for the town and the town center. So it's something to consider as well, like yet another 30-place parking spot for, events and theaters. Is that really what you want in your town?
So that, just to that point of where we are right now, requesting the variance is exactly what you're doing.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly. For those
okay.
reasons.
So 32 is what's required. So you're requesting a variance. Whether this board wants to approve a recommendation or not, it still has to go to the BZA, and they make the final determination. So you can still go for it as you want,
Yeah.
or try to work something else out. I mean, that's where we are.
Yeah, so, right, okay.
Aren't the Willards going to put a parking lot in over here too? It's just for general
are.
town use?
They plan to,
Where?
but that was,
Willard property?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Can I ask another question? Because this site has a lot of graves that were found, so although there's 91% that's available, that doesn't have a building on it, I would assume that you would not be able to pave over graves.
I actually think you can, but you probably shouldn't. I think you can, yes.
All right,
There's
sorry.
there is a process to go through with the state of Maryland regarding grave sites.
Wow, okay, I was just
But you can
wondering,
still-
because that
you can
does.
still
you
visit-
wouldn't want to.
You can still
Right.
visit.
Yeah.
We already went through, we already went through a process to find those graves so that we didn't put the building where the graves would be. And, you know,
Yeah.
I don't think paving that lot, whether there's graves or not, is a smart idea.
No, I think that there's got to be a way that we can figure this out without having to add.
I
parking.
believe that there are
There's a
some.
high school right
I
there.
believe that there are other
there's-
buildings and other neighbors that will be glad to
Yeah.
help.
I mean, if
I
you,
think you probably need to take this proposal and go talk to those neighbors and come back to us with some hard proposals. Otherwise, I have a feeling this might not get the result you want.
Yeah. And we do have to be aware that as much as we support the initiative and what we would love to see happen is exactly what you're doing. We have to be aware of the consequences of gatherings like that. So if we can come up with a plan, I think you'd find some very receptive members of the board here.
I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here, we as a board, like, opposed to, like, just the sort of, don't park in the K2 and that parking lot, but just just fend for yourself and find parking? I mean, like, park along Wooten, walk,
So,
And River,
what question, how would you respond to that if somebody wanted to build some other commercial facility, and this is a commercial facility, and had that same response?
I guess I wouldn't like it,
Probably right.
yeah.
Yeah, the
But if you're going shopping, like, you're carrying stuff with you, whatever, like, if you're just going to see, like, a play or music or, something like that, it's a little bit different.
How so?
oh,
because it's
if,
not every day.
let's say that Locals does a good Saturday business and we overflow our parking. We then need to go next door and go, this one guy wants to park in your fitness lot, is that okay? Or does the,
Crazy enough, it's much more simpler. It's the number that came up with the occupancy permit.
Right.
requirement.
I'm just saying that.
I know exactly what you're saying, but
Right.
it's not.
It's, right.
The goal is to not overflow the parking lots, and not by much, and on a regular basis. We actually reduced our number of, we lessened our parking
We did.
requirement about a decade-ish ago, because if you ever notice, the massive parking lot in front of the old Selby's shopping center, TSC, was never even remotely filled, except for town events on the commons. That was the old parking requirements, and we realized that was excessive, so we shrunk them. I forget how much, but it was a fair amount.
Town events on the commons Do you have an agreement with them? I mean, I know you're the town, but you know what I mean? Is it the same?
Unfortunately, fortunately, the local government is exempt from its own laws.
But if it was okay, so.
It would, knowing,
For the town commons, I mean, would it make sense to have your own parking lot for your once-a-year events?
We have a fair amount here and there.
Yeah, but it
it does
overflows,
overflow.
right? So I guess
And
we're
their,
just,
their stores are open at times that,
yeah.
right.
understand we're not asking you to build a parking lot.
Right.
We're not asking you to build a parking lot.
We're
You're asking me
asking
to
you
get an agreement. with
Yeah.
somebody
So
else.
look
Yeah,
into-
that's fine. I know. I mean,
And-
we'll do that.
Or even yourselves,
That makes-
however that may work out.
Yeah,
Or what?
Or with yourselves or the
Oh, an
Genesis,
agreement
however
with
you're doing it,
ourselves,
you know.
Sure, yeah.
and that big parking lot right in front of the old Selby's.
That's the gym, yeah. We're very,
Well, that's the gym, the Genesis.
right.
Yep, so I think there's opportunities there. And
I think there are too.
Yep, got
Well, and
it. That's
how-
what you're asking for, as
Yes.
opposed to, you feel like you're not able to, for a cultural center, make this exception because you're opening up the,
Yeah. And the other thing is, to your question, can we just let people fend for themselves? I think I would like to see, hey, we're having an event and this is where we have available parking.
Right.
Yeah.
And that way we don't accidentally inconvenience other businesses.
And how does the proposed parking at the Willard property play into all this? I mean, like, I guess that if people were gonna park there, we'd have to change our parking rules again, like to,
No, in reality, that's going to be an overflow parking place, and we talked about that during the site plan.
Public
You
parking
know,
area.
It is a public parking area, yeah,
Was it about 2 dozen? I'm doing this from old.
something like that, I don't remember the exact
Yeah,
number.
it's not more than that. It's a pretty small
so
spot.
there's 24 spaces maybe with the Willard site that is public parking?
Is
Did
it
I hear
called
that?
public?
That's what
So park,
park.
public park.
But you cannot use public parking for what is required by
Commercial.
code. I know,
Wow. Okay,
because we know the events will be larger, and so the overflow will be picked up by the public parking that's available. Is the, you know,
If the town was building a theater,
which they did, yeah. Though they don't have the laws.
would you put a parking lot over there? 30 more places? I mean,
it would definitely be part of the design criteria, we'd have to come up with some type of parking.
so you would say, let's not build a theater over there, because if the town was to do so, they would need to also put
No,
spots.
he's saying they don't have to. It's fine.
No, but we
We'll
would.
get an agreement. I'm hearing you, and we're gonna
Right.
easily work with our neighbors and have maybe options and plans. So.
Yeah, and pardon me, they have not worked with their neighbors to date, and we're talking
Then,
150 each.
When we're done talking with them, we'll ask you for anything else you have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait, please, sorry. 140.
For the BZA? Do we need that by the BZA, or do we?
They are scheduled right now for a BZA hearing.
I wouldn't be comfortable recommending approval of something we haven't seen yet, yeah.
So we would come before you again with our agreement, and then we'd be, okay.
So we push
Okay,
everything.
how about, okay, so that's
Yeah,
the
and-
parking, this
yes, this is a-
exception would just maybe follow that same schedule just for convenience?
I would, yeah. And this board needs to set a public hearing. If you want to set that public hearing for the site plan itself, would be December 13th. If you guys can come back by then, is that going to work for you?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I get very mixed up. But we don't, and we wouldn't need, and we wouldn't have BZA approval before then, under this. But we don't need it. It's okay. We can still have the public hearing on the site plan,
Right.
because it's a different sort of thing. Okay. Yes, we'll be back December 13th. We will come back again. That's the public hearing, whenever you need us to come back, or when we have our agreements in place.
It's the next planning commission meeting.
Yep.
Which is December 13th. It's the same thing. So we would have both by then. I mean, we could, yeah, sorry. Okay, I'm with you.
So actually,
Miles knows what I go through here. I'm like, what?
Is the 13th enough time to advertise? I forget what the public hearing and advertisement announcements, or,
it's just 2 weeks.
it was only 2?
Right. This is our own code. This is not a state law requirement. That's the
what I'm-
difference.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Peter, did you have anything else that you want to mention?
Only respectfully in closing, it's a 140-seat theater or thereabouts, if I got the numbers right. The requirement is only one space for 4. So even the requirement, I think, is light for 32 cars and ADA requirements too, for 140 people. And they're only providing 5 spaces for 140 people. And it sounds like their plan was to park in my parking lot, which was what I was afraid of. And so I'm just want to go on record saying that is not allowed. We have not spoken about this, and my own tenants have parking requirements, which is why our parking lot's so massive. And so I just appreciate the planning council committee hearing my concerns.
Heard and understood, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, guys.
Nothing on the site plan? No questions?
Yeah.
You sort of pick it all back up next month?
Yes.
That's fine.
Yep.
Okay. Jay, do you have anything on this one?
Yeah, I think it's pretty important, and strategically you're looking at the procedure for the BZA, that this would be something you'd want to pull off the BZA hearing. It's certainly up to the applicant and not us. We don't have a recommendation from the Planning Commission. That's not absolutely required, it just has to be heard. But without having all of the information present, I would likely think the BZA would deny this. And if you have a denial, then there's a time period before you can apply again. So it's kind of like the double jeopardy thing. So you may want to talk with the town staff about postponing that hearing on the BZA.
Yeah.
Good point.
You guys good for that? We'll take care of it if you are. Okay.
I think that's what we were saying, right? I was understanding that it is postponed until we come back before you and hopefully get a recommendation for the.
Yeah, I think you wouldn't have to make the request, I think. Well, I don't think the planning commission.
Okay.
If you just drop an email to Niles, I think it'll be.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just send me an email stating that, and I'll share that with the BZA. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Are most of the events that you anticipate having going to be on weekends, you feel like?
I don't know that I can promise that, but yes,
Yeah.
the larger ones, yeah.
I wonder if you could work with the high school to use their lot.
I'm sure we can work with others.
Yeah.
Poolesville Plumbing?
I mean, we can always.
That's the residence too, though. Is there an apartment above Poolesville Plumbing?
There used to be.
Yeah. Anyway.
There's lots of parking. Okay.
Latte bribery, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, you guys.
Appreciate it.
Can we have a board member make a motion to set a public hearing for December 13th for this?
So moved.
We get a second?
About that tactic. Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to recommendation on names to add to the street name list.
Niles, take it.
Yep. So we had, so the Parks Board has done a few different names to be added to the street naming list. 2 of which are for developments, and then a couple or 2 of the categories are for developments, and then a couple will be added just to the a couple will be added just to the, I think it's 3, be added to the list of people who can in the future pick from those names.
Okay.
So let me just pull the
Towards the
list
left.
that I have here. All right. So for the Fishpool property that we talked about earlier, next door, they have requested the names of DeWalt Joseph Willard and Helen Willard Tati Humphrey, I think. And then the street names would be DeWalt and Tati for that development. So under the street naming policy, the Parks Board has already given their recommendation. Question is for a recommendation from this body, and then it goes before the commissioners. For the Bricken property, they've asked for the name Ruth Fisher. Obviously, there's already a Fisher Avenue, so if that name gets added for the Bricken property, it would have to be something like Ruth Street or something thereabouts, since there's already a Fisher Ave. They also talked about potentially doing the park this name, so there might be some clarification that we have to get from the applicant on that one. And then members of the community have submitted names. Laura C. Jameson, who is Montgomery County Board of Education Secretary and taught at the Poolesville High School. Kenny Mallow, who is a well thought of community member who recently passed. Edward Buford Wayne, who was a commissioner in the 50s and 60s. I couldn't find his exact tenure, but that was from what I found anecdotally. And so for historic reasons, they put forward that name. And then staff put Barbara Bobby Evans' name as town clerk. She is retiring this year, and so in honor her for her 40 years of service to the town, town staff recommends her name to the approved list as well. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Just a minor one. The Edward Buford Wynn?
Yeah.
There's a sentence that says, but the Parks Board.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry, that was what I was going to clarify to say, which was that it was based, even though it didn't meet the 10-year requirement, their rationale for the Parks Board was to say that it was of historical significance given the era in which he was a commissioner.
Fair enough.
And I have to ask this because I don't want to have egg on our face, but do we vet these names just to make sure that there's not some, skeleton in the past and like all of a sudden we got a street name for someone that's like, no? Is that something we should?
Right, I think it depends on what you mean by vet. Like, we try to get information from these people, connections to their service in the high school and things like that, but it's not like we're looking for a search of old newspapers, for example, to see if they said anything that people might find objectionable. Some of that information is hard, especially when some of these people
you can only go so
are from the turn of the century.
We'd have to set some criteria of what you would.
But you've never heard anything, any reason why any of these names shouldn't be used, right? Like,
No, nothing derogatory.
all good
about them.
standard.
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Except for Bobby Evans.
Well,
No chance she's listening to this meeting, by the way.
No, this would not.
So they're asking us for
So there's a recommendation
These names?
on these names. Hmm.
I mean, these names are good. I like that it's like diverse. It's not all men, like, because I know that like our parks and everything, like there's a lot of like, a lot of stuff in the town named after men. So I like that there's like some women in here too.
Four women, 3 men. Oh, there's.
Do we need a motion? Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah. I move that we recommend to the commissioners, the names submitted to us by the Parks Board.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain. I've never seen that page, so I don't feel like I can vote on something I've never seen.
You just saw it. Okay, fair enough. 4-0. All right. What time is it? How we doing?
Good.
I can't remember. I don't have my agenda, misplaced my agenda. What's left?
Water report.
Water report. Thank you.
And then
Moving on to the water
Comprehensive
report.
plan discussion.
There's one thing before. Okay, sorry, I got my agenda back. Moving on to the water supply report.
Okay, so typically, water supply reports are going to be talking about capacity. This one definitely is not going to talking about capacity. It's talking about some regulations, EPA, MDE, a lot of unknowns for what I'm going to talk about. Also, more of a cost that's going to be associated with the challenges that we're facing in trying to clean up our water supply. And it's all going to lead down to the big bombshell that I dropped regarding other sources and other supplies that, maybe we take a look at. So it's a lot of information, a lot of moving parts, a lot of unknowns to it. And I'm not going to take as long as I did with the commissioners, but please stop me if you guys want to discuss any certain part of it. So, well 2, underneath the water tower, that's our largest producing well. We usually pump it 24 hours a day, pumps 125 gallons per minute. Right now, we have a cartridge filtration system on it because it was called Guidi, which means that it is, the layers of the earth above it are very thin mantled, as much as the mantle is in Poolesville, and the fractures are fairly close, and so you get interference quickly from rainwater and different things going into the well. So we had to put on a cartridge filtration system, which also then you had to put on a chlorine contact chamber, which is a great big tank, 10,000 gallon tank, sits outside. Obviously, 4 months out of the year, we have to shut the well down. Not the ideal situation. Now, this one also has high PFAS levels, and the levels I have listed on here too is 25 parts per trillion. Currently, EPA is looking at doing a 4 parts per trillion, and it should be released, they say, in the end of December. The new regulation was proposed. And 6 out of our 10 wells do exceed that 4 parts per trillion. So when we take a look at well 3, which is down the street of Wooten Avenue, right by near the Cohal's Townhomes. And again, that one there was 21 parts per trillion. This is the one we've doing the pilot test on. We have 2 carbon-activated charcoal filtration units on it right now. Pilot test is going good. The capital cost to put those units in there was $60,000 just for the filters. The annual cost right now, looking like twice a year doing its change out, is going to be $42,400 a year. The building itself, because we're going to have to house it because we can't keep putting these filters outside and have it out of the well go off the line 4 months out of the year. So we're trying to look at a different building. Now, we just did a small concession stand at Hamels Park, $260,000. Because it's a commercial building and Montgomery County has lots of requirements, and it's a tiny little building. So I just threw the number of $250,000 out there. Who knows what John will come back with. But just to give you an idea of what it's going to cost. So we have to do this with 6 wells. Go ahead, Chuck, please.
When you said the pilot's going good,
Yes.
can you,
Okay, so sure. So it's been 7 months we've been running the test, non-detectable, full removal of all PFAS, as well as other pesticides and different things too. Activated charcoal it takes a lot of stuff out. So yeah, so we sample, actually it's 2 big filters. They're 8 foot tall, but about 8 foot around, 8 foot around, huge.
Yeah.
But anyways, the water goes into one filter, and then it goes through a second one, so it's a lead lag type of filtration system. We sample the port, the raw, sample in between to see if we get breakthrough, and then on the point of entry gets called after the second filter. So once we get breakthrough on the first one, which we finally did achieve, very low levels, we swap it out. The lag filter becomes a lead filter, then you redo that first filter. So pretty simple.
I thought I'd fight for it.
So that is going well, but the cost is going to be ongoing. That's a huge cost, $42,000 per well per year for us to swallow, whether it comes from regaining it from water rates or through the taxes. So we're not sure yet what we're going to do. So moving on from that, we'll talk about well 4 and 14, which is located out by West Willard Soccer Field and in Westerly Grove. Now, this body here, when I was still in here, we did a public improvement agreement with Westerly Grove. And by the 33rd building permit, they had a requirement to bring both of these wells online, tie them together to supply water for that housing development. Well, one of the town managers that was here once I was gone made a change in that, which is actually illegal. You guys have the authority to do that, not him. And they actually just left the well house. No water was put in, and the houses are all done and they're gone basically. So John and I, as soon as we got back, we got right back on the train and I've been working on it. It's almost up right now. We finally got pumps installed in it. The new building's been built. And during that time, COVID also happened. And so the supply chain broke off. And so we couldn't get a transformer for a year and a half. I mean, so once he did this one thing at the 33rd building permit, it was like a domino effect that occurred. And so now we're just hopefully trying to get this back online. But once we get it back online, we have to PFAS test it and go through the whole process. We've gone through all the wells. And hopefully who knows what it's going to be at this point. But anyways, just another challenge we have with our water system right now. Well 5, which is up Elgin Road, really good, 125 gallons a minute well again. All we do is treat it with chlorine. It is 4.8 parts per trillion with the PFAS, so just barely over that limit. This will be a challenging well to treat just because it is on a little postage stamp of a lot. You have a driveway and a small little teeny house. Trying to get a filtration unit in there would be very difficult. Well 6, which is out by Bodmer Avenue, Bodmer Park, another good well there. It was 5.3 parts per trillion, so definitely it's going to need some type of treatment, most likely, I should say. It's unknown at this point until EPA makes up the ruling. But it does have a larger lot on that one if we had to put filters in there. Well 8, which is out behind the middle school, very small lot on that one too. 11 parts per trillion. So again, we have the PFAS in there and challenges with how are we going to treat this water?
Can I stop? Just
Yeah.
a question. You say it's going to be challenging to get filtration in there. Are you saying impossible or like almost impossible or like?
So for well 8, so well 5 would be almost impossible. I'm not sure how we could even,
It's gonna sandwich the equipment. It's the equipment that's the issue.
yeah.
And there's no like right of way around it or anything that we can.
No, that was a tight, very tight one.
Yeah. Okay.
An older well. Now, well number 8, there may be some room on that property. Of course, there is, it sits in the front yard of one house and right in the backyard of another house. So it's kind of a strange configuration of how it's laid out.
If you needed to, could you run like a water line to an off-site location for
So
filtration?
we're going to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
You're right, that's exactly, what we're looking at doing.
We're gonna have to get creative and figure stuff out.
Oh,
All the
yeah.
wells go to the water tower.
Well, it's a loop system, so it goes to homes and water tower.
It doesn't go directly to the water.
Gotcha.
That's what a lot of people in town don't understand, why we can't just treat in one
I was wondering
place, because
3 seconds ago.
Yes.
Yep,
it's-
it's a loop system.
Yeah.
So 7 and 9, we have uranium treatment on that one there. That's 7's up right as you leave, before you leave town, and 9 is on Bud Road. 10 was part of that package too, but it did get iron bacteria several years ago, and it's been abandoned because we could not fix it and clean it up. So just kind of another vulnerability in the well system itself. Now that we just swapped that, every 5 years typically we change out the media in that. It's $100,000. National Regulatory Commission just changed the amount of uranium you can accumulate, and so we have to do it every other year now. So it's going to be $50,000 a year we have to save up to do this. So just another cha-ching, just throwing money right back at it. And then we go through, 11, which is actually a good well, only 2 parts per trillion. 12, which is Stony Springs well, I think it is. Yeah. That's 6.7. That's over here across from the high school. And then Tom's well over there, Brightwell's perfect. 75 gallons per minute, 1.6 parts per trillion for. So we are looking at how are we going to actually handle all this? And there's so many unknowns right now. You can't really. We've applied for some grant monies. They've offered some up, very little bit, because there's so many unknowns right now as far as is this actually going to be adopted by EPA, and then they're going to have all kinds of loans and different things going on. But for us to be able to put these individual treatment things at each one of these wells and think that we're going to be able to swap out this media every 6 or 8 months, depending on the concentration that's developed in them, it's just going to be really a monetary challenge to figure it out. So we are looking at well site number 1, which is on Hughes Road. It was abandoned back in '94, I think it was, right by Tractor Supply. We're looking at that site and being able to tie 3 or 4 wells together at that point, do pipe bursting or bores underneath the ground and pulling pipe through the, without excavating, trying to limit the amount of damage we can. So we're trying to put all these numbers together and figure out, what's the most cost-effective way to come out and to do it. So, got all that in the bag. So then Martin and I both sat in with an MDE meeting too about climate change and how a new report is been published. Or actually, it's for MDE's internal use, and it talks about really centralized Maryland and Poolesville is part of that as far as ground geology and hydrology and how climate change is going to impact potential recharge. And really, they said, this is potential climate change, their words, not mine. And they said it could be 10% more rain or 10% less rain. And at this point, they're not making any changes as far as permitting and anything else goes. I know there's another study that's going on too, looking closer at that exact model, plus looking at well interference and how the recharge may impact that in the future. And that should be done in maybe the first of the year. We're not for sure exactly yet. But we're also working in the hazard mitigation plan with Montgomery County. And they've identified climate change and impact to groundwater as a critical factor for Poolesville. And several years ago, they did this. Excuse me a second, lose my voice.
A year ago, I'd be really freaked out right now, but
So, they've identified that we should research or look into an alternate source. And one of the options was do a feasibility study to see what it would take to carry the WSSC line, which is up by Harris Teeter, and bring it out to Poolesville. So what would that's just a study for it. The study was like $100,000, and that was in 2018. I don't know if they have any updated numbers yet. And that would just be like a valve, I'm dying here, with the meter, and if we had to use it, you actually buy the water. So we want to make sure that it wouldn't be used for any additional growth. The alternate would be to find another potential well sites for redundancy to build into the system also. And I'm done right there.
you want me to grab you a water?
Oh, my Lord.
All right.
So, any questions that John could answer?
That's a mouthful.
All right, John. Yeah. It's been a while. Can you refresh my memory a little bit about possibility of additional well sites within?
There's one other well at the current time that infrastructure would be costly to put in. It's over off of Cattail Road, back in where the lawnmower facility used to be. Yeah.
How?
Can't tell Jameson
I
well.
remember that one. How many gallons? Guesstimate.
About 35.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not much. I mean, we don't know what the quality of that water is going to be either.
That's the big unknown too, yeah.
Yeah.
So my only thought, this whole conversation, was do we identify something in the water resource element that discusses looking for, looking for an alternate supply or not supply, I don't want to use supply because that really.
Source.
Yeah,
Source.
source, I think it probably,
So for instance, Brunswick, they do, they have the water they pull out of the river, okay? But then they also have wells that they pump from. Cost-wise, it's cheaper to pump from the wells because of the amount of treatment that has to take place than it is to pull from the river. So.
and just to talk about the WSSC, if that ever, even if the feasibility came through, it's going to be, probably a couple $1 million a mile.
Yeah.
Easily. Acquire the acquisition of land and everything else that would take, and going underneath the Tri-Seneca Creek, and, I mean, it's almost impossible, but to plant a seed of looking for alternative sources, or just being aware of it, I think was
Yeah.
Right.
the whole point to this.
Additional and alternative, right? I mean, everything's on the table.
Martin, you were in the meetings too, I mean, so,
Yeah, I mean, I think you're giving an accurate description of it, and just to you and Niles, like, thank you. I mean, I know this is like goes over and beyond. Like, you're probably stressing about this, and it's a lot of your time and a lot of work, and I appreciate you staying on top of it. I mean, I definitely get a sense where you guys are like really on top of it, and this matters a lot to you, and that's very good for the residents. I mean, we're lucky to have you guys so engaged. So thank you. But everything you said, I mean, like seems accurate from everything I've heard. A lot of unknowns, and like, so are you saying that the EPA will definitely decide by the end of this year what their what the
They,
rates of
they
PFAS
set
is going to
that,
be?
they set that target date themselves.
Okay. And we have no idea really, you think it's going to be 4 parts, but you don't know for sure, right?
Proposed legislation is 4 parts per trillion.
Wow, that's a lot of unknown.
That's a tiny amount, too.
It is so tiny. And this is nationwide. We're not the only ones dealing with, by the way. This
Yeah.
is everywhere.
And they're looking at-
Livestock and
they're looking at
water
filtration.
filtration companies, yeah, seriously.
They're looking at what, 3 years, assuming they were to do that at the end of this year, they're talking 3 years.
3 years before enforcement or, right.
I think it would be negligent of us not to add something into the,
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Yeah, and because I mean, when I first, before we, my first contact to you guys went out before we had our meeting with MDE. And we knew this report was out there in climate change in wells, and we had like this sort of Damocles hanging over our heads, like this is something bad's gonna happen. But then we came out of the meeting like, okay, well, it wasn't all that.
No, I'm curious to see what the other report's going to be, the one that talks about the well interference, and if that's going to change anything, but it doesn't sound like anything's going to change super dramatically. But it just sounds like there's a lot of unknown, like even the people that know tons about this stuff still aren't really sure what's going to happen. And clearly there's some weird things are happening with weather patterns and stuff like that. Like, are we going to have more rain? Are we going to have less rain? Like, who knows? But we should be prepared for in my opinion, all the contingencies, and we should have language in there that addresses this and makes it look like we're engaged and we, paying attention.
And searching for other well sources is probably the lower hanging fruit
Yeah.
and more palatable to everyone.
and at least on the more feasible, I mean, like the WSSC is just like this,
I know.
yeah.
This is just I'm just thinking out loud. We can't get permits to run a pipe to the Potomac River, can we?
We examined that several years ago, and there's a whole long process to get
Yeah.
to withdraw.
There's a way to do it,
Yeah.
but it is
It's-
a long, expensive process. And
Yeah.
Because mileage-wise, isn't that shorter than by Harris Teeter or no?
I think that's the closest one. I think White's Crown Road, there may be one out there too. So I'm not sure what,
Yeah.
If you go to the river, WSSC is giving you clean water.
Right.
And I think Wade, I asked you about this, and it was a non-starter. But the creek up on the west end of town, that's not that couldn't provide any kind of.
for what, drawing water off of? or-
Yeah, it's not
No.
enough. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So
Do
we
you
just
need a
come up with bullet
consensus
point. I
to-
mean, it's something super simple.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
We'll take a look at whatever you put together.
You don't need to vote on that. You just need a consensus,
Nope,
right?
this is all just
Yeah, I'm good with it.
informational, really.
Yeah.
It's actually a very good segue into old business.
Yeah.
Comprehensive plan discussion and possible adoption.
Good evening.
Good timing.
Yes, thank you. I was warned that possibly I could come a little bit later, which allowed me to get around the traffic of Baltimore.
Nice.
Thank you. And sorry to have missed you all last month, but glad to be back, and hopefully we're getting close to the end. I think we wanted to go through the document. We were preparing to present last month, and if you've looked in the OneDrive, you see that we had a track changes version, that we included all the comments that were received to date prior to that, and then we created clean versions based on that, and wanted to get any kind of final round of comments and changes. I know Niles is out of town, but we also, Wade and I talked today, but Niles and I, hi Niles, can you hear me? Okay. We've actually set up a meeting for the Monday after Thanksgiving, come back down here again to kind of go through everything and make sure we get a final version that we can then, with your assent, submit to MDP for their review. And then we'll begin that process of getting their comments back and then setting the hearings and other meetings that are part of the process. So we will still be able to make changes along the way, kind of minor changes. Susan LaRousse is the planner at MDP who works with Montgomery County. I've worked with her in the past and tipped her off that we were finalizing the plan document so that they are ready to receive it once we've got your approval to go ahead and submit it. Typically what we do, just as an overview, is once we get the comments back, it's usually a memo of 6 to 10 pages, let's say. They try to do a pretty thorough review, both within MDP as well as the other agencies that are involved in the state. And we can annotate the plan based on those comments and kind of go through them with you. Typically, we do the first with staff just to get kind of a vetting process to see if there are any things that require, additional analysis or thought. In some cases, we've pulled a lot of data, as you know, for the plan, for the individual elements. Sometimes they may ask about some of that data. We may want to put it back in, depending on what the comments are, especially for the housing section. There's also, I think I mentioned this earlier in the process, and this has been about a year of me working with you, so believe it or not. I think I was first here in the December meeting last year. But they have finally finalized at least some preliminary guidance on the fair housing requirements of legislation. So I'm going to look at that again and see if we need to add a little bit of language to the housing chapter that reflects that guidance. But MDP has been working very closely on that issue over the past year, and in fact, there's a accessory dwelling unit task force that recently convened, has been meeting to kind of look at that issue in particular. So housing is kind of top of mind at the state level. So I'm anticipating we'll get some comments back on that, just because that's really what they've been working on most closely. So I also mentioned we're still in the process. I haven't spent too much time since our last meeting after we submitted everything to you, working on this just to kind of save time and budget on this, but we do have a few appendices that we'll be passing along. I think I've already uploaded a couple on there, but the ones that we'll be finalizing here are just a summary of the public involvement process that Envision Poolesville that we did early on in the process. We're also going to have a little appendix on there about the methodology that we utilize for the development capacity analysis, and that's pretty a standard thing. If folks ask about it later on, be able to have that as a reference. And then we'll also need to meet a little bit with Wade and Niles about some of the data tables that are the background for the water resources element, and including that.
And a few others as well.
Yeah,
because there was plenty of comments back on a lot of the maps and charts and things like that.
Yeah.
So we're going through those. Just to also clarify a little bit. So all of the planning commissioners gave feedback back, and then I redid it. So if you look at the drive as well,
okay,
there are more. There are all the different drafts again. So both red line versions with everybody's changes, and then those all cleared up and a couple of things. So what the goal is trying to just get further along on the text to make sure that we're pretty established. I sent an email to you all on the 31st of October that had a few different questions about sort of general things about format, and so I incorporated the purpose as a call out, as Brian had asked, just because the consensus seemed to be that was fine, and things like that. So we can sort of discuss those as well.
Okay. Yeah, so however you want to handle this discussion, we can kind of go through all of these again. What we'll do between now and the time I meet with staff will be to review all the other comments to see if we've missed anything, and then the goal would be to kind of finalize it with them and get it into a version that addresses all the comments and is, again, kind of the draft version to send to MDP. And again, we have opportunities to continue to tweak it. I think mentioned to you all and to Niles that once we got through this version, we were going to also add the photos in. We have a bunch that the town has provided. I have some that I've taken. I think Larry Marcus has taken some as well because he regularly bikes through town. So we'll go ahead and add those images in there. And if there's any particular images that you'd like to see included based on your comments, we can either get those or maybe we have them in a file somewhere. Okay. So that's kind of my introductory comments. I don't know, Niles or Wade, how you wanted
Now,
to.
how are you guys feeling about this, where we are right now? Have you had time to review the edits? There was a few talking points I think we wanted to go through, just between Chuck and Lexi. I know there was a couple thoughts that were being floated out there.
The last review I've done personally was of the, a month ago or a few weeks ago, but right before the last meeting.
Right, okay.
So I have not looked at the most recent, just haven't had time, but it's not to say I can't do it.
I've looked at all the edits, all of the comments. It was interesting to see how each individual commissioner sort of like had their own thing that they gravitated towards. I do think that we should definitely discuss the restructure that Brian brought up. I am very concerned about how busy those objectives are with all of the sub-bullet points, and I'm not sure that it's necessary as long as at some point we reference them in the addendum. That last part that we had, I'd love to discuss that, which was the implementation. It is incredibly difficult to read. And just structurally, it needs to be restructured. But I think that that might be a good place to pull some of those bullet points and just keep the main portion and have the implementation have a more detailed information on each heading. But I don't know where you want to start. But I do think that definitely we should discuss the restructure that Brian had on the comments. There were more comments, but there were a lot.
Okay, let's start with that. The thought behind that, just for clarity, was that everything I read was objective, and then in the objective in the first two sentences was the purpose of this section. And it was kind of repetitive, and it's like, well, the purpose isn't the objective. It's actually separate. So why don't we call it out and say, this is the purpose, and here's the objective, or overview, sorry, overview. I felt like it was cleaner, a little bit more succinct, but it's also not a deal breaker to me. I can live with it the way it was written.
As long as it's consistent.
Yeah.
No preference. Consistency is very important in a document like this.
And the other thing I mentioned about consistency was that sometimes we refer to something as an element, and sometimes we refer to it as a chapter.
Yeah, there should be chapters. I think I did that, a couple of those myself.
Okay.
Couple global
Yeah.
places.
And the only thing to reference is that we just referenced that, like municipal growth, we referenced the guidance from the state on element, but we can make it clear that that's what the state calls it, I think, and then just call it chapter everywhere else. And that won't, there's only a few places where it says element anyways, so I can fix that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting kind of legacy of the recent guidance on comprehensive plans from the state have been about the water resource element, the municipal growth element, and the housing element. So the legislation actually makes that reference. So I think that's why in a lot of the plans, we use that language. But it's the same as chapters, so.
Doesn't matter to me if we call them all elements.
Okay.
I think we just need to be consistent.
Okay. On the whole concept of the implementation chapter, so I think I mentioned early on that because I've joined Wallace, I was kind of using what we typically have used as a structure for a comp plan, which is creating those kind of goals, objectives, action items, and then pulling them into the implementation chapter, and then have that separate chapter be kind of guidance. So I understand why that's a way of doing it. In some ways, it's simpler because if we develop them consistently across the chapters, we end up with a separate piece that you can then use to track your actions in the future. Now, there's a lot of variation in terms of how comprehensive plans address implementation chapters, and in larger jurisdictions, they can have very long matrices. I mean, it ends up being almost like 30, 40 pages where there's individual actions and identified, who's responsible for that. There may be a time frame, there may be a budget. So that's probably more extreme, but often it provides a lot more detail. It's not the way we've necessarily addressed implementation, and there's not necessarily specific guidance about that. It's really how you want to utilize the plan moving forward. So however you want to structure that information, we can do it if you want to change it how it's laid out. But that's kind of the logic behind how we've done it here.
Let me ask a different question.
Sure.
Why do we need an implementation chapter
Well, if we don't have,
of the document?
I mean, you could argue you don't need it. I mean, we could.
Argue that we don't need it.
We could put like some language in there stating that, we've identified them, because if we don't have it, we'll get a comment back from the state, like, where is your implementation chapter? Again, that's advisory, you don't have to have one, but we probably want to have at least some language in there, like, what are the action items that are here, and where are they? So if somebody's looking in the document, they can see that and say, okay, in each, if individually in each chapter we have a list, those are the items. But typically, I mean, the reality is that most communities want to have that, because then, 10 years from now, or whenever you start your next plan, and there's different people on the planning commission, they have some kind of guide to understand kind of where this planning commission was when you adopted the plan. So it's kind of as a record, but it can be done a whole bunch of different ways. And I've seen it, I mean, sometimes people really want a lot of detail in that, and we end up spending a lot of time on it. But if you don't think that that's needed, we don't have to
I
have
fail
it
to
in there.
see how the implementation chapter is any different than the stated goals and objectives within the individual chapters.
Right.
So what's the point? If we're just going to restate them, then I would say we don't need it. But if we're going to take those chapters and simplify them, which was my original thought, then keep the implementation chapter as a, expanded,
Repository for all the objectives.
as a repository for all those sub-bullet points.
Can I also say, like, I feel like when we started looking at some of those, like some other town and communities' comprehensive plans before we started this process, I remember thinking that communities that had that, like, what an amazing thing. Like, coming into the planning commission when I started here and having to kind of root through our last comprehensive plan to find those things versus having a chapter I could go to and be like, oh, this definitely doesn't fit in, would have been really helpful for me. So I think from that perspective, I really love the idea of having an implementation chapter. But I can also see what you're saying, it is a repetition of it, and I would be completely happy to decrease or simplify the wording in the chapters, but maybe keep the implementation part. Maybe change it so that every bullet point that's a sub-goal or an action item should be within the same color as, I don't know. I hear what you're saying. There's something about the formatting that's funky about it. But I like the idea of having it all in one place that I could go and be like, okay, yep, like we're working through this. And if I need to read more, I can go back to that chapter.
Put that way, Amanda, I totally hear you. And I can totally see where it would be really nice to have every single chapter's goals, objectives, and how we're going to meet those, or what the action items are, all in one place. I think you're right. So maybe the implementation chapter is needed, but again, if it's just restating, it's.
Right, I agree with that.
Because it's really not about implementation. We haven't even talked about implementation. Calling this implementation is a stretch and a half. I mean, implementation, you start talking about, priorities, schedules, things like that, which we're not going to do in this master plan. That's out of scope. That's why I just feel like it's adding no value. It's just restating things that were in one place that were scattered across 11 chapters.
Let me throw one out for you, because we've all looked at so many different plans over the time. And when I look at somebody's master plan, a comprehensive plan, or when developers come in and look at a comprehensive plan, they go to the chapter that they want to hear about and see about and find out the goals and objectives and what do they have to do to meet a development plan or whatever they're, it's, so taking stuff out of some of those individual chapters, I feel takes away from that whole process.
Loses context?
Yeah.
Thanks for muddying the water, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm wondering in some respects, if it's a standalone chapter, does it impact anything? If you were going to be reading a comprehensive plan and you recognize that this restated it and you didn't need that piece of information, like I think about being in education, when I look at curriculum resources, they might have, I teach reading, so they might have all of the sight words by unit, but then another thing has the sight words alphabetically. They're two of the same things, it's the same information, but depending on what I'm doing, it may be more beneficial to look in one place than the other. Is this one of those things that it has a benefit in both places, but not maybe for everyone? I don't know.
I guess the question comes down to, for me, on that comparison, is how much do you use it? If we're using sight words every day, I would like them both ways. But if we're using a comprehensive plan, if I'm looking at it twice a year, I don't need the.
I would argue, though, that our town staff pulls out pieces of it for nearly everything we look at and refers to parts of it. And oftentimes when I come here, I bring my physical copy of the comprehensive plan, not this week because where my room was that I needed it was not available before I left, but I usually have it with me. So to be able to look in, depending, how quickly do I need to figure something out in the whole chapter and read 20 pages or just implementation in general, it depends, I guess.
Remember, all that the implementation currently does is just summarize the goals and objectives. And most of the stuff that we quote and reference are not necessarily in goals and objectives. They're in the meat of the document as well. So again, I'm just not sure. I don't have a big problem with it one way or the other. I just don't think it has any value. And I think it's confusing when you call it an implementation plan because it's not. It's a summary of the goals and objectives.
Right.
So what if we called it that? Would it make it better? Just at the end, we had a summary of our goals and objectives. And then gives us.
That is the truth, what you said, though.
Yeah.
But if it's actually, it doesn't actually match up. I don't know.
Some
if
of them don't
cross-reference,
match, yes.
It doesn't match up. Yeah.
Copy.
It doesn't.
Cross-reference.
I cross-referenced too.
They didn't.
They were missing.
They're missing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, I mean, it could go as an appendix either way if you wanted to just make sure all that information was still in one place.
Yeah, so definitely if we're, sorry, the other thing is, I feel like it's more of a supporting information as an appendix level and not at the level of the chapter in the document.
I
Okay,
think that makes sense to
Very
me.
different weight, carries very different weight that way.
okay.
And I think that your point, Chuck, on renaming it, like summary of goals, objectives, and action items.
Sure.
Instead of maybe implementation,
Yeah.
would make sense as an appendix instead.
So based on our recent experience in working with communities here in Maryland, when we were working with Aberdeen, the city council, at the end of the process, so we had a similar format to the comp plan there that we do here. But they did really want to hone in on priorities. So we ended up having a conversation at the city level to discuss those priorities and identify them and call them out. So based on all the work we had done to date, okay, we have all this information. What are our priorities? We want to go ahead and document them. So we could do that as well if you all are clear on what, or you want to have that conversation about what the priorities should be.
I don't think that's part of this process.
Okay.
In fact, I have notes here as soon as we're done with this process to talk to Brian about figuring out what are this body's goals
Okay.
for the next 1 to 2 years, starting next year.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that's going to be looking at priorities and resource allocations and stuff
Sure.
outside the context of this.
Yep.
But driven by this plan.
Totally. I mean, that makes sense too. I mean, they in that case, they decided they wanted to include that as
If you
part of
put
it.
that in the plan, it's not changing for 10 years.
Right.
Right.
That type of implementation plan needs to be able to change
Right.
in an instant.
Yep.
Like, who knows, some little thing might come up like, oh, water and PFAS that might come out of the blue and totally change every priority we had for the next 12 months.
Yeah. Well, I think in their case, they kind of knew what they wanted to launch into, so they just wanted to emphasize it in the plan and say, you know, since I mean, it's every context is a little bit different, and we just want to make sure, and based on the outline of required elements or chapters, we have what's needed in there. But there's, again, there's a lot of variation depending on what you want to emphasize.
So do we want to address the, almost exhaustive nature of the current goals and objectives in the chapters? Do we stand to leave them the way they are?
No preference, as long as they make it into one of the two locations, then we just make it clear.
I'm saying if we're gonna have an addendum that has some of these in the addendum, do they have to also be?
That was my point, I don't care as long as they're in one place, or they don't have to be.
So we can make it more concise in the chapter. We can eliminate some of them in the chapter.
Well, it sounds like Wade was saying that that's where a lot of builders go,
Oh,
Yeah.
right? But they should be reading the entire chapter. The goals and the objectives and action items don't
That's-
necessarily give them the information they need.
And I guess they probably do, but with staff and people who come in and use this as a tool, use it differently than I think your perception, how you guys would use it, like you said, it is a different whole
We
perspective.
want it to be useful too, right? That's gotta be one of our objectives overall, is to have a useful document.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, who's gonna really look at the comp plan
Yeah.
anyways? People that are interested in doing something,
Yeah.
or homeowners, when they get here, they may want to take a look at it to see how big they're gonna grow, or, you know.
Do we answer a question there, or we just ask more? We just ask more questions, didn't we?
I think part of how long those goals and objectives are that some of the objectives were listed, it was like things that should have been just in a list. It should have been like listed with a comma. Like there was no reason to.
or to be sentences,
It should have been a sentence versus a list that's like half a page long. So like there were quite a few that were like that almost felt like action items, but were actually just a list of that should have been a sentence. I wonder if some of that would make some things feel better.
We could certainly go through it and skinny it up and kind of take a look at all those again. We did it once because it was like, it was out of control before, the first time we went through it.
Yeah.
And some of them
And I know,
are very fluffy.
I was just gonna say, I know, Amanda, where exactly you're talking about, so I can look at that too, because you had called that out, so. Sorry.
All right, so we're gonna try and skinny up the objectives a little bit. We're gonna take a crack at making them a little bit more streamlined, concise.
Bring them down. Because there was a lot of fluff in a lot of them, I think.
Yeah.
So some of those some of those were lifted verbatim from old documents that just felt like it should be dropped in there, so.
Right.
They don't all have to exist.
Yeah, in some cases, we looked at because, as I think I mentioned as we went through the chapters, we at least wanted to, if it was something stated in the past, did you want to keep it, take it out, amend it, et cetera? So it does some sense become kind of a laundry list. And the other thing is, like I said, kind of mindful of the review, like the state will be looking for certain elements. They have like checklists, and so they kind of compare that to what's in the plan. And if something's not in there, they want to note it. And then if when we get those comments back, if it's something you've taken out, we can say, well, yes, we talked about this, but we decided that we didn't want to include that in the plan. So
Yeah, Susan actually came here and met with this board a couple of years ago. Recall. And she said exactly the same thing. It's your comprehensive plan. There's a few items that are required, but otherwise,
Right.
make it for your own.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't, again, when we get the comments back, you don't necessarily have to accept all of them. You can say, hey, well, yes, thank you, but we talked about it, and this is what we want to include. But when I'm trying to facilitate that process, I'm also keeping that kind of checklist in my head, so that making sure we've talked about that, and if you all say, we don't feel like that's needed, okay. So that's, I mean, it can be definitely tedious, and trust me, I understand that. Like, okay, because I'm like, did we talk about this? Did we talk about that? Did everybody, like, even in this conversation, hopefully a consensus emerges, that you give us the direction with Niles and Wade to take things out, add things in, edit down, but I also want to make sure we're all kind of clear, so when we come back with that final version, like, okay, this is what we want. And I also recognize there's many different opinions here and different approaches to it. You all may not agree either, so I just want to get to a point where we get to a final.
We've come to pretty good consensus on how we
Okay.
want, And if there's something that you're unclear about, let us know specifically, because we feel like we're being clear, and if we're not.
Yeah, no, I think we are. I mean, again, I've been working with Niles and Wade because
Yeah.
they've been working with you. And I will say, I appreciate that approach. It's not the way we always do it. Not every planning commission and all the commissioners are engaged in a process like this. Sometimes it's really hard to even get any input at all from some folks.
Not from this panel.
No, thank you. It's made it a good process.
Next thing, can we talk about formatting?
Yep,
What?
Can
Formatting.
we talk about formatting?
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry. I heard forbedding and I was like, what?
What is that word?
So confused. Formatting. I'm with you.
Let's get some.
Okay.
Thanking Lexi for the formatting.
For the format, well, first off, if we're going to get rid of the implementation chapter, which it sounds like no one's opposed to switching that from an implementation chapter to a addendum, I would get rid of every single one of those boxes, though. Like those. Just seen that chapter?
Yes.
Yeah. Formatting, I think just as long as it's consistent. I think that was my biggest issue reading all of these back to back to back, is every single chapter looked completely different from the previous one.
Oh, okay, so it was, okay.
Yeah.
Got you now. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm getting it.
Yeah, we tried to clean up the formatting, actually, because I recognized that we had a couple different templates that we used as we drafted the chapters, and so, because we started at different times. And so we attempted to try to make them similar and simplify them, because if we ended up adding photos in or other graphics, that's going to move some of the text around in the final version. And that's part of the reason we've held off on adding some of that, because we want to focus on the text and make sure you're comfortable with what it says, and then we can always make it look better with images and so on.
Will we get updated maps and tables? Because I know I had a bunch of comments on maps and tables.
Yeah, we're going to go through all of those. I have all of them. I wanted to go through all of them with Michael and Wayne and all of them. All of them have been documented. We just have to get them all fixed and make sure that was what you wanted. So
Yeah. So we did spend some time on that for this version, but obviously it still needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So Nikki Wiley from our team is really our expert on that, so she's going to help me with it once we're going to meet and go. And yeah, we may not have caught everything that we had previously. And again, we've pulled out a lot of the tables in some of the chapters, like the housing. So we still have the data, so if the questions comes up from MDP and you decide to add it back in later, we still have it, and we can put it back in, or not.
Shall we continue?
Yes.
All right, so there was another question brought up about enhancing and adding, and this is super timely given our earlier discussion, to add more cultural information to the plan. I think that was Martin's recommendation. We should probably discuss that, especially if at some point in the future we will need to define cultural. How is the town hall defined? Because isn't that a cultural institution?
I assume it's a government.
it's usually considered just a government building. It's just a public facility.
Old town.
Oh, that's a historic resource.
Yeah, historic.
Yeah, fine, I can,
Is it listed as a museum? Don't you have museums?
It is.
I think it's listed as a museum,
this is a museum.
pretty sure.
I was just thinking some kind of language that we're trying to embrace, like any kind of like museums, art kind of stuff, anything that like is willing to open up here. That's going to help with, huh?
That's economic development.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's going to help bring people to town and enhance agro-tourism, that kind of things, art tourism, art agro, whatever. Whatever.
No. We last time around we thought we'd try the agro-tourism lever, and that didn't work. So yeah, it's a good point. If you want to, the economic development chapter would be a good place to do that. Like one of the things we're going to try to base our economic growth on for this next, turn at bat is going to be, and then whatever that'd be a great place for that stuff.
Yeah.
There's definitely been an increase in the past couple of years with like open house, like farm open houses where they have like their their little niche things, whether it be like alpaca knitted stuff and you can go there.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of thing.
And it all comes right through town.
Yeah. Encouraging people to go to the breweries, the wineries, like, if David gets this, venue open for music, I mean, all those things I think are important for the livelihood of Poolesville, not only for the residents, but for people visiting.
Yeah.
So are you talking about adding a little section in the economic development chapter on cultural resources?
I'd like to see that personally. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but.
It needs a better name, but
Yeah.
concept, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, however you want to customize that. I mean, it just generally speaking, though, those type of sites and attractions that have a significance.
Another objective to this.
I think it's actually
As long as there's no sub-bullet
chapter
points.
with text.
Oh, I thought he was going to list as sub-bullet points, like all of the potential
Lots of
cultural
bullet points.
institutions and agritourism.
Check boxes. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm open to however you guys would want to do it if you want to do it. But I just think that it's for prospective people looking at the town, for whatever. I think that we value the arts here is an important thing. That we value, I mean, agritourism is different than the arts, but.
We can ask Wade and Nas to take a crack at.
I can plagiarize off of something.
Exactly.
ChatGPT is my best friend.
No, you're right, that's true.
I can like that.
Okay. So you're talking about both existing and future, like new types of facilities?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not just facilities. If it goes in the economic development section, the point is we're trying to leverage that concept to help grow
Yes.
the economic basis of town. It's not just about having museums and culture for that sake. It's to do it to help grow the economic base.
Right, we don't even necessarily know what they would be.
And it's not our point, it's not our
Right,
place to even
but
do
but
that.
we encourage it, and as a government, we would support it on some level, whether it's like putting it on the marquee or actually like, small grants, micro grants, whatever, like that we are,
Festival.
we're behind it, yeah.
Okay.
Additional potential
Yeah,
business.
yep, you got it.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of like a community identity through these types
Yeah.
of uses and
Yeah.
attractions, both existing and new.
Yeah, I mean, like if I'm someone that's looking to move to Poolesville and I scan the comprehensive plan, like I don't want to just think I'm just moving to like a bedroom community that can
Right.
was a gas station and a CVS and a Dunkin' Donuts where I can get a donut in the morning. Like I want to know that that there's like some kind of vibrancy and encouraging things like art, which everyone seems to. I mean, nobody dislikes art, I don't think. And same with agritourism and all those things that could make the town interesting and get people to come to town.
Okay. More tourism of different types,
Yeah.
but based on the resources in the town, or could be developed in keeping with the community character. So
Yep.
people recognize Poolesville for these types of things. And being a place where the town is encouraging that kind of development. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can work with Niles and Wade to figure out how you want to frame that and add a section into the chapter.
What's next, Leslie?
I feel like there was something that Chuck brought up in his comments somewhere between chapters 4 and 8, but I can't remember.
There's it right down.
My sent email.
In there somewhere.
I see in chapter 4, there were definitely like some,
good,
like,
thank
do
you.
we need item number 6? Do we need item number 7? Under goals and objectives. And that, chapter 4 is, I don't even remember.
Yeah. I pulled up Chuck's comment, and so he had in several sections. He had like chapter 4. Yeah, do we really need item 6? Does it truly add value as a top level goal? Sounds like business as usual to me. And item 7 feels odd here. How is this a community facilities item? So those are the two things. And he has ones on several on also chapter 6. chapter 7 and chapter 8, here's a couple of comments there.
I wasn't wrong.
Never are.
So I think a lot of the comments, most of the comments I read are like little things like, oh, this should actually be like table 3.2, or this should be, rework the sentence and stuff like that. But conceptual items, that's the last conceptual item that I remember, is that Chuck had some things like, do we really want this item, or should we rework? So I think we should maybe look at the items that were considered by anyone that either they needed to be combined or taken out completely. So, because that's substance. Do we want to start in chapter 4? Let's start in chapter 4, because I think that's where it starts.
Number 6.
Yes, so number 6 for goals and objectives is critically review all facilities and services periodically to determine whether they provide adequate service levels, and then partner with organizations to protect and preserve the town's historical resources and make those records available to the public. Now, those statements by themselves seem fine to stand alone, but, and I don't want to put words in Chuck's mouth, but it seems like we may have already gone down that road before.
Any facilities.
I'll let you speak on it, Chuck.
I gotta open that chapter up. There's a lot of those our current goals and objectives that just feel like they're wastes of space. Come on. They were pretty much, a lot of them have been, like I said, they've been plagiarized from other town documents in the past.
I mean, I guess I'm looking at number 6, which I just read, and comparing it to number 1, which is under goals and objectives. Provide, 4. Provide and
Number 6,
preserve.
critically review facilities periodically. Okay, wait, go do your job.
But
what value does that bullet add as an overall objective in the town master plan, if you want to get into these details?
I'm not sure I would look at it that way, but I would say that under just goal 1, which is provide and preserve park facilities and open spaces in both location and size to serve the needs of the town, isn't that the same thing?
As what?
As as 6? As 6?
Absolutely not.
I mean, if your facilities are not adequate, isn't that review process part of just number 1 in providing adequate services?
They do change,
Yeah, I'm
right? I mean, they evolve and.
right.
And we have different goals over time to, look at different types of parks and services we do. But number 6 is like, just review your existing facilities periodically.
I feel like that one really came in with the library potentially not being big enough to serve our community, and we could use this goal
So that's a
as a
completely
way
different beast.
as a way to like leverage Montgomery County. If I'm remembering all of our conversations for the last year, I feel like that was what that particular goal was about. Because when you just read that out of context, I was like, yeah, why do we have that? And then I was like, hold on, the community facility we were talking about was that one.
Then call it out.
And potentially the pool, because weren't we talking about a bubble with the pool?
I think you won't be there.
And like that,
No, I don't. Well, and that bubble for the pool is called out specifically in here in a different chapter.
I think we call out the public library
It's
too.
public
they
library is
call out
also-
the public library, but not necessarily in the goal. That's the thing. I think it's called out later in this chapter.
The bubble on the pool is called out in the goal section in one of the chapters. I remember, I just saw it a second ago.
And I can see, yeah, it's like the next page down, there's Maggie Nightingale, and the last sentence, part of it is, the town should lobby the county to evaluate an expansion of the facility. So I'm almost positive that that tied to that. And then the next part is the outdoor pool, and the town is lobbying the county to build a bubble over the pool.
There it is, yeah, bubble.
So I think that those two pieces were the pieces that was referring to without specifically calling them out, but maybe we need to say, such as the library and the pool.
Just for reference, in goal number 5, above it, is an expanded library to meet the growing needs of the community.
Yeah.
And a
Never
bubble
mind.
for the
Right there.
That's what
citizens.
you were just reading from, wasn't it?
No,
Oh, that's what I was reading from when I said the bullet was intercities. I'm like, what value is 6 adding?
never mind. 6 adds nothing.
I would, I would actually say that number 7 could just be combined with number 3. Number 3 is coordinate with public, nonprofit, private sector partners to provide more services and programs to the Poolesville community. Just add into that to preserve and protect the towns and to,
Okay.
just add an and there and put them together.
Sure.
That's fine as long as we call it historical resources, because I think that's the
Yeah,
key
yeah, yeah.
word in 7. But as long as that's caught up, that's cool.
Yeah, I think you can definitely combine those.
Well, I'm so glad that I remembered that part without reading goal 5.
Okay, where are we?
Do you want to go to the next chapter that has comments like that from Chuck?
I was looking, it's not chapter 5, is it 6?
Uni growth.
No, it's 6. It's 6. But those are more about reformatting it, putting the bullets under 3 into 2 column, put the bullets under 6 into 2 column.
Although those could be, again, a continuation with commas between each one as a sentence. And then we
And I
don't
think that's what you
need
s-
lists at all.
Either
Yeah.
way, the whole point here was just to save space, because I'd really like to see that those goal sections not running over pages if at all possible.
Yeah, it looks like both Amanda and Chuck's comments on this particular
Yeah.
section isn't so much about content, just about format. And
Well, but be careful one thing, though. For example, number 3, that list is actually specific and needs to stay. Because that is actually each of the documents that, when we get into our planning for next year, those are the ones we need to go through. And
I'm not saying get rid of anything.
no, I was just saying in this particular case,
Yeah.
that was a very specific list that had specific documents.
Yeah. Just removing the bullets themselves would be helpful. Just, it makes it look insane.
Oh, there's the pool cover again. Chapter 6.
Yep.
Very, very last bullet. Carries over onto the second page. You got this one bullet hanging out there all alone.
Looks like in chapter 7 is the next big one that, Chuck, you noted that we have too many goals and objectives.
Now, some of those points, though, do reference some of the guidance from the state. So regarding the affirmatively furthering fair housing, you'll want to keep that in there. And the equity and housing for affordable opportunities, those types of things. They'll be looking for that.
But none are required.
Well, some of it is at least some analysis is required by the recent legislation. So that's the question that we've been dealing with, where there's not necessarily the full guidance yet in terms of how to do the analysis. So
Like
that's,
Susan made it very clear that there's certain sections that they'd like to see, but
yeah.
they are not required.
No, I understand, but it'll be noted one way or the other, and you guys can decide what you want to do. I'm just,
I was
I
gonna
mean,
say,
it's document, not the one he edited.
Oh, I'm looking at the one he edited. So like,
I should probably do that.
So several of the, I'm not sure if the comments. So like comments from Chuck are like 6.2 bullet, or goal 6 bullet 2, kill it implementation is obvious. And on my copy, it's gone. Like it's, so I think those have already been addressed for the most part.
So what I did is there are two versions of the plan. One has all of the track changes. The other just sort of took everybody's comments and kind of took them at face value. So when he said to cut things, I tried to cut things. So the idea was so that you could both see what he was saying and see what that would look like with them cut out. That was the way that I was trying to do it. So if you want just one or the other, that's fine. But that's the way that I did everything. I cut out where he just said cut it. I tried to cut it just to see how you guys like that or not.
Then we should probably discuss all of that red.
So I don't see the track changes, am I?
Yeah, I don't see the track change.
I don't see the
So when you pull
So
up
there's
the
two.
draft, you need to hit the little button that says, I know it's tracking changes, and there up in the upper right, it says comments. Looks like a little bubble.
I need that. I got you. I know how to do it normally, but I don't here. Like this is my 360.
Wait, are you on a Mac? No.
This is
Can you hit the comments? Oh, they were there.
comments.
Yeah, here.
Comments should all still be there.
I thought he said that there's something with track changes, right? Like red that I
Yeah,
should see.
you should
I don't
see
So that's it.
Oh, because you're on the wrong document. You're on
No,
the
this
clean.
is
Yeah.
the clean one should be that one, right?
No, you don't want the clean.
I did,
To the other one, and I didn't see it before.
yeah, revised clean. I
What chapter are we on?
tried to rename them by date. So the ones that have a November date are the ones that I edited. The ones that have a September date are the ones with track changes. But there's two files. There's two folders in the shared drive.
Red.
And it says,
I want red.
Yeah, I think it is a separate folder with the track changes versions in there.
No.
yeah.
And then there's the clean.
Make it work.
So Niles, did you edit the clean versions further? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so what I did, so yes, so there's two separate things, okay? What I gave them was, Michael, your clean version so that they could edit it, so that they weren't editing red lines.
Right.
Then I took their edits, made a new
Yep.
track changes version with all of the redlining,
Yep.
and then I corrected all of them so that people could see, like especially since most of the comments, as Lexi said, are just grammar, capitalization, spelling, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I wanted to clear all of that out. So,
Yep.
so the track changes version is there. If you go into the share file, it is under. It's called Commissioner Feedback Versions,
Yep, okay.
and it's listed by chapter, and all of them have a September 23rd
Yep.
date on it, which is I just took yours and did track changes. There's a clean version of each of them, and they should all have a November 3rd date on them, just to make it all clear.
Yeah, I looked at your last, I didn't go through them all to check all the comments, but I saw,
I don't know why I can't.
Yeah.
because part of it was we just wanted you all see that we are
Okay.
making changes
I was
based on
looking
your
at the wrong
comments.
version.
What? Sorry, what was it?
So forgive me, I was looking at the September 23rd version, so those have already been, those are not on the November version. The clean.
Okay.
copy. I
So,
don't know
okay.
what's- I don't know what's happening here.
I'm confused.
I can check that out. So what you were seeing redlining on the November version is what you were saying?
No, it's not on the
No.
November, but it is on the September. But do we need to discuss
Yeah.
the red lines on the September?
So most of them are just those grammatical errors, all the spelling changes and all of that. The stuff like Chuck's ones, or that's why some of the bullets was in that are in that red line. And I can also copy and paste that and just send that to you all. That's not that difficult. And do that. But that's why I took out the third bullet under one.
Quick question, Niles, just for clarification, help me out here. My bottom line of my question is, are the red line versions that were recommended by Chuck that I do not see on the clean versions, were those discussed with, did we discuss it amongst ourselves to pull those out as well? Or am I just out of the clean version without discussion?
Correct. And I just did that because I was just trying to show you with the red lines. But I can, here, let me just send this to everybody and that will make it easier.
We should discuss the red line version.
So the September 23rd version.
September
for those of us who
23rd.
don't see red line.
Yes, September 23rd, for what was
And it's
taken,
in,
we should
right,
discuss.
and the full,
That we agree.
Yep,
And what chapter are we on now? Because
7.
I've gone through so many, sorry.
7.
Thank you. I'm getting there.
That's okay.
So if you go to, it's,
My least favorite chapter.
Housing.
Niles, can you share it?
so there's I'll share it with everybody. I'll share it up there,
On your
actually,
screen.
that makes sense.
On your screen, I can't open it.
Yep,
up. Can you
hey.
put that on your screen?
Yep. Just give me 1 second. I have to do one thing,
Let's go.
okay?
I think, so looking on my September 23rd, I don't see any of the red line things. They're just gone
Okay.
from mine.
Interesting.
It looks exactly like the other one. So I don't see anything that Chuck had referenced. It's
I
gone.
saw the same thing when I did it.
Okay,
You couldn't
That's-
see them either? Okay, thank you.
If you open it up in preview, mode,
Okay,
you
that's-
don't see the red lines.
that's
You get the-
bizarre,
Actually in
but-
Microsoft Office to see the
Enable editing? Did you enable editing?
Enabling tracking.
okay. Hang on 1 second here.
Download it? Is that?
That would
the
help.
problem?
That would
I
help.
can download anything.
Well,
I'm- this is all browser.
The web browser. but
I
if you-
don't, no, I meant like.
Sometimes.
Okay, hang on 1 second. I'm going to,
Voices, comments.
Oh, joy.
Okay, if I download it.
give me 1 second.
Download it, you can.
We kind of
Is
did.
it up? Okay.
No.
One was just, I mean, some of them were just like whatever, but the big one was an alternative water source. We talked about that.
No, I was talking about sustainable Poolesville's.
Yeah, wasn't that her final comment?
Oh, no, Joyce says, we could talk about that.
I'm just bringing up that we have not discussed that.
No,
Yeah.
we can.
Remembering?
A few
I read
seconds.
that this
I'm
morning.
sorry.
Okay, I'm going
I know where
to,
your head is, but.
We've got 9 minutes is where my head is. I'm fading.
Okay. Can we get through chapter 7?
Let's go through chapter 7, red lines that were eliminated with, and just make sure we're all on page, on the board. Somebody read them to me because I can't see.
Okay, I'll read it. So goal 1, support a variety of safe, quality housing choices that are affordable and accessible to households of all ages and abilities. Sub-bullet 1 is support various housing options for individuals and families of different socioeconomic levels, life stages, and physical needs. Sub-bullet 2, support high-quality housing that is healthy, climate resilient, and energy efficient. The third sub-bullet, which is recommended to be struck, is work with local and county elected officials and regional organizations to identify housing needs, including housing for all age groups, and support aging in place and other long-term housing needs.
I'm okay with that going.
Yeah, I thought we talked about that.
Okay. Nothing really under 2 or 3. Under,
That's not true. 2, it's goal 2, bullet 2, make it 1 line, never.
yeah, it's, that's editing.
Yeah.
There's minor editing in 3. So strike in number 4. So if number 4 is identify incentives for the improvement or redevelopment of housing. Bullet 1, coordinate activities with the Montgomery County Office of Housing and Community Affairs and the MD Maryland and of Housing, or MD Department, of Housing and Community Development to help homeowners maintain and improve their housing conditions. Bullet 2, explore state community legacy funds for essential projects aimed at strengthening communities through activities such as business retention and attraction, encouraging home ownership and community revitalization. Bullet 3, recommended to be struck is identify grants and other funding opportunities such as engaging nonprofit organizations to assist low to moderate income residents to support home improvements. Oh, we had a whole
We
big
had an
discussion about this.
This was an extensive discussion.
That was the big
This
discussion.
was a big discussion.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know that I'm ready to strike that.
I do not agree with striking that one, especially considering our whole big discussion.
I think you and I may be the only ones who remember this discussion.
I'm not gonna
Yeah, we can't.
bring out details. I do not agree with you on that.
This was for like revitalizing, to help revitalize certain areas of the
Okay.
town who may need
Whatever, it's okay.
revitalization.
Keep it in. Niles, keep it in.
Yeah, move.
All right,
Okay,
the last one would be under.
I'll make
six.
that change.
Under 6, take steps to affirmatively further fair, is that right? Take steps to affirmatively further fair housing throughout the town. Bullet 1, coordinate with the Maryland Department of Planning and the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development to complete the required fair housing assessment upon the insurance of guidance from state agencies. Bullet 2, recommended to be struck. Implement the action items from this assessment upon its completion. Oh, I think we can totally get rid of both those bullets and just make it one item. Like, just pull it all into 6. Why have bullets?
Additionally, maybe we should remove the word affirmatively in the
That
main
is-
goal. It's very awkward. I don't know how any of us didn't catch that. That's
That is,
That's in the legislation, that's why.
no one wants to say that out loud.
Loaded.
Loaded word.
That is a lot.
Can it just be take steps to further fair housing throughout the town without affirmatively? I mean, that's kind of a given, right? Like, you're not going to do it negatively.
I was thinking the same thing.
All right. And then let's pop over to 8 real quick. Recommended to pull out item number 8. So just for update, this is a transportation element. We have 10 items, but number 8 is continue to deploy strategic speed management techniques to improve the safety and efficiency of vehicular traffic within the town.
We really need to call that out. We just do that all the time. We've had those for decade plus, and you move them around town as need be, based on whatever conditions happen. That's just what you guys do.
I didn't put it in there.
I'm just,
I
I was
see no
more
need
looking for you for a, did we just do that, right? Because we own those.
No, we do.
Opposition there, we're good? Strike it? Strike it.
I wasn't there yet. I was still trying to get the changes downloaded.
Do we need to tell the town there's speed bumps? Probably not.
All right.
Strike it.
You want more speed bumps?
No, I don't.
We get requests from the citizens for them occasionally. I
course.
don't know if it's been a while, but,
They-
and stop signs.
All right, I think that's all, but I'm gonna take a real quick peek to see if there was anything else. Chuck.
Let me just,
And the infamous continue to that I asked to be struck.
yeah.
That's just,
That was edited.
yeah, sorry, I just saw that.
and I took that out pretty much,
The red lines on that page.
He got the red line.
and I took those out pretty much everywhere that we saw them, so they're, like, just in general, they're gone.
Good rule of thumb is don't use passive voice as much in those documents. And save space.
Oh, yeah, chapter 10 is my favorite goals and objectives. They should all look like that. Damn it, stop it. It's my favorite.
There was one thing I remember I had said too was potentially considering defining the guiding principles that we're using in different chapters. The only reason I was thinking that is that I feel like we say it in one spot and it's kind of short, but we don't necessarily refer back to it. And I think if people really, if we want to emphasize the importance of it, I
A lot of
understand.
those, so pretty much every chapter would have 2 or 3 of the 4 guiding principles listed.
Yeah.
So pretty much just saying at the beginning of each chapter, restating all 4 guiding principles to a large extent.
So,
You're saying. I was just
I
wondering.
was just gonna go back,
Emphasized maybe enough in the tie together, but I don't know. That's just maybe how my brain works. I see what you're saying, Chuck.
You liked 10 with a nice, concise.
Yeah, that's
way.
my favorite. Okay, I'm almost done. I'm so close. I'm on the last chapter.
Not counting 12.
thought we got rid of that one.
Sustainability.
Oh. I was on sustainability. I was talking.
We have a different conversation to have on that one.
Yeah. So, to you, Brian, do you want to discuss the sustainability chapter, or it's your game?
It's my game.
It's your game.
Probably we should. Question is, where are we, like, we're not on a deadline. This isn't September, like it was supposed to be handed over to the commissioners in September, and we're doing what it takes to get this done. We're moving it. And I think any much more further discussion tonight is just going to be mush in our brains anyway. So we are moving into holiday period, so I don't know that we're going to be able to pull off a work session to move this along any further. If we're comfortable pushing it another month, we can do that. Or we can throw some comments around through email on the sustainability chapter.
Can do both.
We can do both. Throw some comments around, meet again next month and hash out anything that has been hashed out yet.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, because Niels, you sent out the draft sustainability chapter with the comments.
Correct. You should have gotten it. And Wade sent it once, and then I added it again with everything else with the for tonight. So just so that was all there.
With the comments specifically in line to which section or where in the document.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I could certainly comment on all of Joyce's through email or whatever, doesn't matter.
Andy, you want to talk some more, or are you good? All right.
I motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Before we adjourn, can I just add, so.
Sorry. I didn't mean to sigh so loud.
I got a 45-minute thing to talk
It's
about.
very uncharacteristic of you, Mark.
Just real quick, so I can give the commissioners an update, like, what's a realistic goal here, like, February?
So let's set some goals for ourselves then right now.
Okay.
Let's say by next month, we have hopefully get a clean enough version in our meeting that we can go ahead and improve it to go out. Even though there's going to be some minor tweaking, some pictures, it's not going to be a final draft document. It's going to be a draft document, but there's still going to be changes. Get it out to the reviewing agencies, to the commissioners, and get that 60-day clock running.
Yep.
So that will happen maybe early January.
December 13th, we'd send it out to them.
If December 13th,
Okay.
if we're good, yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna say January, and then if we beat that expectation, then great. And it sounds like we probably will. Okay, that's all.
On that clean version, can we actually get the full version with the addendums, with the maps, with all of the stuff that we have?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, once we meet with Niles and Wade, a week from Monday, we'll go ahead and finalize everything, and we'll work with Wade and Niles to make sure we're getting all the comments from tonight. So at least there'll be a version based on all the comments, and I understood what staff has been doing since we sent the chapters over. They've been kind of working with your edits, so I think we hopefully talked through most everything tonight so that we can get a draft version. But as I said at the beginning, and I think Wade just said, even after we send it to MDP for review, we could still tweak it up based on the changes that maybe some lingering issues that you want to talk about. But then we'll get all the comments back, and we can see if there are any changes from that you want to do. But again, you're not necessarily obligated to, but at least it's on the record if there are questions about it, et cetera.
We do have a motion on the floor that has not been seconded.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good night.